There we go. Season 1, episode 2 of the Salespeople podcast. How's it going, Ben?
Yeah, good, mate. Really good.
Yeah, good
Very
stuff.
good this week, mate. Yeah.
We've doubled the amount of podcasts that we've done.
Very good.
It's amazing. So, the Salespeople's podcast. We are the Middle East's first podcast dedicated to celebrating salespeople. So every week we're going to have a superstar salesperson in the room, talking about their journey, talking about their lives and their topic close to their heart. So we've done podcast 1. If as good salespeople, we should reflect, summarize. Yeah. What did we learn? What did we take away? What can we reflect on episode 1?
I thought Katrina was such a good first guest for us. She speaks really well, but I love her story as well.
Yeah.
You've spoke about her for 4 years, and it was the first time that I'd met her. And you always spoke about her resilience, and her story is just so cool, man.
I just don't believe that she was a shy kid.
Nah.
No, you don't know that at all. Like, that's the first time we've met her. First time I've met her.
But introverted salespeople, and I consider myself one. I think it's like stereotypical salesperson that's big extrovert in your face. Like, she's not like that. She's just confident, quietly confident, but comes across really well. So it's actually one of the things I loved about her.
And probably a bit different to today's guest.
Yeah.
I'd say he's definitely on the extroverted side of confidence.
So excited for him, though. It's going to bring like huge amount of energy.
Yeah, so today's guest is Wes from Remote Pass. So I've met him a few times. So we are in partnership with Hub 71. So we help and consult companies and startups who are looking to talk about all things sales and their sales function. And every Monday there is a breakfast that I go to probably once or twice a month. And you won't see him, but you'll just hear him, and then he's just bouncing around and he's just talking to everyone. He's like a social chameleon, and he's just full of energy. Like, literally, we were doing press ups outside the studio. So yeah, he's doing that day to day, and good guy, great salesperson, and I think the theme of this week's pretty fitting for him. It's the power of networking and the power of community. So I know for you, like, community has been such a massive part of your journey and development here in the region. Would love to know kind of what that means to you, the power of networking and the power of community.
Katrina touched on, so in the last episode, she touched on her first 6 months in Dubai, and it's tough because you move away from family, you move away from familiar, like things that are familiar to you, and you've got to have a bit of a reset. And like, almost everyone goes through that same journey, because you build up your move in your head, you think it's going to be this paradise, you land, and then you realise it's actually, because it's so fast-paced, Dubai, and so many people come and go all the time, it's hard to establish a community of people that are there for you that you would have been used to back home. So community for me has probably been the biggest catalyst to my career in Dubai. Part of an amazing community called To Be Limitless, which enables me to be surrounded by hugely successful people, entrepreneurs, business leaders, etc. But that community is also incredibly vulnerable, so we can reach out and really ask for help. So I put a lot of our success in Dubai down to the community that I stumbled upon almost by accident 6 months after I arrived here.
And what do you think have been like the key things for you that the community has given you?
So stability, because the community's big but selective, and it doesn't change. A lot of these guys have been in Dubai 10, 15 years, and people come, people go, but the large percentage of that community doesn't change. So there's a bit of stability there, the ability to be vulnerable. So I really can reach out to that community with some of my biggest challenges, whether it's personal or business. No one judges you, and they're there to help. Unconditional help as well.
And in terms of sales community, I think firstly, thanks to everyone listening. We're trying to build a sales community in ourselves. What do you think if hopefully we're on a journey to build a sales community out here? What would be, if you looked at it for maybe in 1 year's time, what would be a successful sales community for you?
So the one thing I think we all can do better at salespeople is interact. I think I said last week is sales is incredibly lonely, and without people and community around you, it's really tough, right? Sales is up and down. It's a roller coaster. All those things that we know, but having a community of people that are going through the same thing makes it relatable, makes it easier. So yeah, like I'm really excited to start building out this community, and as you know, we've got plans to have in-person events and things off the back of that. So like this, I think is needed for a lot of people.
And what are you looking forward to most about Big Dog Wes today?
Hey, so Wes, I've probably spoken to this guy as much as I've spoken to my family in the last 2 years, but I've never met him.
Yeah, I know, crazy.
He's such a figure on LinkedIn, huge on personal branding, just energy, man, and like. You talk about like network and community. This guy has only been in Dubai, I think, 18 months to 2 years. But almost any salesperson in the region will know him because of the brand that he's built, the way he puts himself out there, the way he interacts with other people with inside the community. Like I'm excited to know whether that's something he developed once moving here, or it was sort of underpinned his successful career, and he's had a lot of successes. So I'm excited.
Yeah, should we get him on?
Let's do it.
Let's do this. Here we are. How's it going, Wes?
Good. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, you're a bit of a podcast veteran. This is your fourth time easy, second time for us, Show us how it's done.
Man, you guys are the naturals here, like the sales legends. So
we'll see.
Just think about the camera as a prospect, right?
Got the remote pass branding on.
Of course.
Big dogs will be happy.
Got to always be representing, man. Always.
I was saying in the first part about the Hub 71 breakfast, and I won't see you, I'll hear you when I come in. Then you're bouncing around, giving it full energy. How do you find, I guess, before we jump into you, how do you find the pace and energy of always being on point for networking and community? You are bouncing around all the time, you're talking to everyone, that is a lot, but you absolutely do it in your sleep. So how do you find that?
I think it comes down to a personality trait. I don't think it's something that I really learned. I think it's a personality trait. If I think back at school even, I used to be that naughty child that would be put in a corner facing the wall because he's talking to everybody around him and distracting them. So I think because I genuinely just like speaking to people and getting I have a curiosity. I'm like, man, what excites you? What are you doing? All those kind of things. And the interaction of people is where I get my energy. So the more people I'm speaking to, the more I get hyped up, the more ambitious I get, or the more motivated I get. So as much as I'm jumping around, it also gives me the energy. At the end of the day, I'll be dead tired. I'll get home and be like, I'm exhausted. But it does fuel me up and give me that boost of just being able to speak to people.
And it is so natural from seeing you on the Mondays and beyond. But take us back to the start in terms of sales journey, how you got to where you are today, and what it's been like, not only in this region, but before in your career.
Awesome. So I think my journey is an interesting one. It's I started my own first business when I was 13 years old, which was in a virtual world. Back then, it's before metaverses were a big thing and stuff, and I was earning good money. And I think that's where starting that business of buying and selling things in these virtual worlds started giving me the impact of, hey, I enjoyed speaking to people, even though I was lying about my age to be able to run this business online and all that in this virtual world. And it gave me that interesting interaction of getting to learn where I can give discounts maybe, or what it's going to take to build a relationship that somebody keeps coming back. I mean, I built a loyalty program at that stage in these businesses at 13, all that. I was running it for about 2-3 years, and I was making at peak about $1,500 a month. As a 13-year-old in South Africa, exchange rates were great. This was good money. It made me a difficult teenager, right? Because I would be like, that's it. I can move out. I can afford this, actually. So if there's any fights, I'll be like, yeah, that's it. I can. Don't chase me. But eventually I realized I don't want to be inside a computer forever, right? I want to speak with people. And I did the thing of hey, let's leave the business to get money. And I went into the service industry, which was waitering. And I believe everybody should at some stage in their life do this, right? Go work in hospitality, go be a bartender, a waiter, anything, but it's going to teach you core people skills that, no matter, even if somebody's grumpy, how to handle that reaction, how to still try and give them the best experience. Did that for about a year, realized that's not where I want to be for the rest of my life, right? And a friend of mine's father approached me in the little town I was growing up in, and he's like, hey, let's build a local Groupon together. And I was like, sweet. I think I was 16, 17 at the time. I was like, great, let's do this. We built it out, and within about a year, we were break even. And I was walking up and down the roads of the little town, going into businesses, introducing myself, being like, hey, this is our product, this is our service. We're going to get you to give something away for free and pay us a subscription fee. So that started building those skill sets. And what I always tell people is I don't have kids yet, but once I do have kids one day, I'll always try and encourage them of like, people skills are something you'll always need in life. Like that is something that is not negotiable. Any career you go into, the more people skills you have, the better you will be able to perform. Other skills you can learn along the way, but from a young age, getting those people skills did set up my career, if I'm being very honest. Got out of that business. Basically, my friend's father bought me out because I got bored of this. Again, didn't want to stay in a small town forever. Went into the whole like, let's make money online, drop shipping and all that nonsense. It doesn't work. It's fake. And then friends of mine were exiting a local company and starting a fintech called SnapScan, and I wanted to jump on board on that. Joined as a salesperson, took like a massively low salary, rented a car because I didn't have a car at the time, slept on my brother's couch, but like hustled it that every like quarter I could be like, hey guys, I'm exceeding target expectations. I want to raise. And eventually it was myself and one of the core founding team members that moved up to Johannesburg to launch it there. Originally it would be for 6 months, and they moved back to Cape Town. After 6 months, they're like, yeah, you're not married. You got to stay here and actually build up a team now. And with that, I got to get a part of the company. I got to start building my team. And that's the first time I had a team of my own. I was like 20, 21, and I'm like hiring people. That's wild, so it was crazy. So that was going for about a year, and then the company got acquired. And when the company got acquired, my role also changed. I suddenly got to see what corporate life's like because we got acquired by a bank. So every Monday morning, I have to go into the bank's head office, sit at a boardroom table with the head of sales of the bank, all the provincial leaders, and I'll give reports on their teams because suddenly all their teams are falling under my sales as well. And I'm traveling between all the different provinces, or like we would call it in the Middle East, Emirates, flying between them, training the teams, giving targets. And I just realized how corporate this is. I was the guy that's always in a t-shirt, sneakers, hyped up on energy. And I'm sitting around everybody in suits and ties and not understanding the fintech really much. And I actually forfeited the rest of the buyout. I think I got a year or 2 years worth of the cash, and the rest of it, I was like, my career is more important to me. From there, I went into last mile delivery as a launch specialist. So I got to hire a team, go to new areas, and essentially launched a business each time. And that went into funding problems, retrenched my team. Then I ended up leaving into venture building. Love the venture building space. I think it's super exciting. You get to work with corporates and SMEs in innovation. Then a friend of mine approached me to be like, hey, you're in too much of a comfy, cushy job. Come build a startup with me. So joined him in building a local South African startup. We raised some cash. We built a payroll, funny enough, a payroll platform in South Africa. We were doing really well. That ran into funding problems. So then I ended up going back into venture building. Loved the company that I went into there. The only reason I left eventually that company after about 6 months is I wanted to move to the Middle East. So then I moved to the Middle East, joined a company in the Middle East for knowledge reasons. I mean, I don't know the differences between free zones and mainland and all that. So got 6 months of knowledge there, really learned about how the ecosystems work in terms of legalities of startups, and got introduced to the guys at Remote Pass, and now I found my home. And this is where we get listed. I'm going to stay here until we get listed or something. Like now it's really expanding.
Love that, man. Love that. You, there's so much to unpick here, by the way.
That's why whenever people ask me that question, I'm like, how much time do you have? Yeah. And these are just like core highlights, right? So I'm like, how much time do you have?
The first thing you skipped over, mate, you were 13 years old and you founded a business. Now, at 13, the majority of people aren't trying to launch businesses or trying to make money, mate. We're in the playground playing football, right? All we care about is whose ball is it and whether we can play. Like, what the hell happened? Why at 13? But,
I think it goes back even further than that. I think like in my childhood, and I'm speaking about like 6 years old, like I think I referenced my brother, we'd have like stuffed toys, teddy bears. and we'd build with pillows and blankets little houses, and each teddy bear has got like a personality in our minds, and we'd use money for them to like interact and trade. From there, it developed into being like 10 years old and playing with those little toy cars, building cities out of paper. So you'd walk into my room, I got into constant trouble where there would be paper towers built and roads made with duct tape for these little cars, and each one has different personalities and business interactions, to the point where we started printing money, like a local currency, for these games that we were playing with these toy cars, that then exceeded to becoming an Excel sheet, which was the bank. And like, oh, the bank owner is just crediting your account to buy this, but meanwhile there's not enough money in the bank. So very much real life experiences.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think from there, the natural progression came that when I started getting into gaming and virtual worlds, I was like, okay, cool, Sims is fun, but I want to be like, I want every Sim to be a real person. And what sparked it was I was in this game and I was 13 years old. I didn't have a credit card, so I couldn't buy the virtual currency. That's out. And I had to figure out how to make money. So I realized that in this virtual world, players couldn't create items yet. So I could, for example, buy this microphone from the game for 100 virtual credits, and they would buy it back to me for 50. So when I was 13, I was like, there's a massive opportunity here. When somebody wants to sell this, I'll give them 60 and I'll resell it for 80. So I was making some money. And eventually, like I said, I was making serious cash. The only problems I started running into, which changed the business, was being a virtual currency exchange, because you could never sell your currency back to the game. So at one stage, I ended up with like 200,000-300,000 of this currency. And I was like, well, what now? And I realized, but hey, on PayPal, I can get somebody to PayPal me money and I can give them the credits in game. And that's how I started generating this. And at some point, the founders of the game actually gave me the backing, because people were like, yeah, but he's going to scam me, this and that. They're like, no, he's safe, because they can't do currency conversion themselves. They'd get into legal problems. They're like, no, he's safe. He's not going to defraud you. They learned about my age and stuff, but it was just always swept under the carpet and never spoken
I was going to say, what did people like when they realised that? What would you wear? Like, what were their reactions?
Well, I mean, nobody really ever found out, right? Because you're an avatar. I remember at one stage, like, voice chatting, and I'd use like voice changing software to try and not sound 30. Exactly. And I think there's a lot of interesting aspects that came through that as well that I think might have influenced my life. But I mean, I think I grew up very quickly. There was a lot of things that I probably should not have been exposed to that I was. I mean, 13-year-old boy is not going to complain.
Incredibly successful outside of school. You mentioned that you got in trouble at school, right?
Yeah. School was always difficult for me. Like, I'm one of those people where I've got super ADHD. I'm pretty sure you guys can really experience that. Like, I can't.
Really?
Sure, joking.
And the jumping around all over the place made it really hard. So the places where I performed was like when I was in a Montessori school, where I could pay attention to what I feel like at that moment. And that's why I'll always encourage, like, if I have kids one day, I'm going to first see, like, okay, do they fit in a normal schooling system? If they don't, maybe Montessori is good for them, where you can concentrate on math right now, but if in half an hour you can't focus there anymore, go do what else you can and excel at what you're strong at. But for me, the best part of school was always just trying to talk to people. It was never the actual schoolwork. It was like, hey, I just want to speak and get to know everybody. And in the Montessori system, I got to connect with the older children versus my own age group. I couldn't connect with my age group. So when I was like, grade 8, I was connecting with the matrics, and I'd be hanging around the matrics and they would be my friends. Similar to that, it's always been that way in my life. Even now, my friends generally are older than me. I'm more within my brother's age group than my age group because, I don't know, maybe I just aged before my time or something, but it was just the thing.
I love that concept around, like, you didn't fail school, right? School failed you.
Yeah.
You're incredible at what you did. They just didn't allow you to hone that. And
yeah, I had to sit so much detention for speaking in class. It's insane. If I think back to it, I'm like, great. And how productive was that on my time?
And now your job is to tell people to speak.
Exactly. I'm like, guys,
get on the phone.
Exactly.
When did you understand about the sales world and kind of when did sales become something that might have been like a hobby or just an interest to actually, I'm pretty good and successful at this?
So I think what captured me with sales was first entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship captured me, even if I go back to school days before even having a business, is like your market days where you're selling things at school with like sweets and stuff or whatever. And the concept of being able to create something, have people come there, buy from you, and you're generating revenue at the same time and creating a sense of freedom in a way, that captured my attention. And I think from there it evolved to being like, hey, this is a skill set that I'll always need. Any business will need this, and I'm actually good at this. So as that evolved, I started digging deeper and deeper, and now I enjoy like sales mythology, like reading all of it, understanding all the different aspects. I don't think there's ever one right way. I think you need to learn from everybody and take little bits to create your own. The same way, something I'd love to study one day, but I'd never practice, like go into a career for it, is psychology. Because a big part of sales to me is also understanding your buyer. Right? There's psychology involved here. Like, how can I get you to buy from me? What is your personality? What's making you tick? What motivates you? And how can I position this to be the best for you? And that psychology part, like, that's a game to me always of trying to unlock, like, can I? So the most difficult caster to me is never difficult. It's a challenge. It's a game. It's a, how do I unlock this? Or how do I beat this boss and understand the psychology?
Especially in the Middle East, right? I think we are in such a diverse culture out here, and there are so many different cultures, religions, ethnicities, and in the sales world, understanding those personas and those behaviors is so tricky. Like back in the UK when you sold, you had your kind of hour pitch, you gain that credibility before you go there, you pitch your product, you get told yes or no. If it's a no, you ask for feedback, you get the feedback. If it's yes, great. Whereas here, things can prolong, or there's multi-stakeholders, and there's just this different kind of way of selling.
Yeah.
Like, how have you seen that change from when you've been over here, and what have you adapted to in understanding the psychology of salespeople in the Middle East?
Yeah. So I think the psychology part is you have to be extremely adaptable in the Middle East. Because there's we live in a country where it's mainly like 90% of the population is expats from all over the world, right? So even if you're focusing on one type of business, there's so many different personality types that you have to cater to, that the best way to do this is try and be most adaptable. Like I keep telling anybody I speak to in the Middle East is there's no script. If I think that in a lot of salespeople, there's like, oh, use a script. I can just read this script on the phone or those kind of things. I'm like, that's never going to work here. Like you got to be like, that's your baseline, but you got to be adaptable to that personality. You need to be able to make like key part for me in the Middle East, no matter where you're from, is relationships. Like Middle East is relationship based. And I actually appreciate that because those relationships will stay with you no matter where you go. And that's where, for example, you just mentioned it, like when somebody says no in other countries, it's a no. For me here, it's not a no. It's
always open.
Exactly. It's a not yet.
Yeah.
Because I've built this relationship with you, right? So even if it's a no now, 6 months from now, you might be in another company. Yeah. I'm still going to be here. I'm going to come to you and be like, or I might be in another company with a different product and I'm going to come to you and it's not going to be a no then. So for me, that door, it's just not a right now. It's never a real no in the Middle East. It's a not right now.
And I think businesses, even if they don't move to a different business, businesses change very quickly. Exactly. We have to adapt because this market changes so quickly.
Yeah.
So even if they don't move business, I think there's still an opportunity.
I think that's actually one of the best experiences I've had here, specifically coming from South Africa, where South Africa, very much you build for a South African market, which is very limited when you're building a company and you're doing sales. And yes, there's a few companies that then try to sell to an international market, but it's really hard selling from South Africa into an international market sometimes. What I find, and this is just my own personal opinion, like people can debate me on this, is as much as tourism is a hub in the Middle East, or let's say UAE specifically, your sales for your companies, this is a hub as well. Because from here, you're in a time zone that's very much linked up to a lot of other countries, which assists you in those sales. You've learned from the different nationalities that live here how to speak to those people, how to prospect those people. So if I set up meetings with somebody in Europe, I've gained that experience here. I know what I'm talking about. And my time zone is more similar. The same with America, all that. We're living in South Africa. I was very much this little country, and the end trying to sell to the big dreams, but it's not as easy as when you're living here. and people are normally curious because they read so much about the UAE. So when I'm sitting in a call and I'm like, yeah, I'm in Abu Dhabi or I'm in Dubai, people are like, oh man, well, tell me a little bit about what's going on there. And they get excited. And you can use that excitement to build that relationship and that bridge even better.
Today's topic is all about like community networking. And I think like it feels like with you it's effortless. Like the way that you conduct yourself, the way that you can really kind of own a room, own an area. Do you work in community networking, or is it just this case of because of the way that you are that is naturally a strength of yours?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
Like at times I'll have to be like very aware of it and be working with a plan, being like, hey, I need to get into that community. But I'd have to understand my reasons why, or build. What I always try and say is either enter a community or build a community. I always try and build communities around myself. Like if I had to start cycling, that's great. I can enter a cycling community, but it's going to be like, how do I build myself into this to make it my community? It can still be a self-standing community of its own, but how do I compartmentalize this in my life? It's like, hey, that's my cycling community, or that's my Abu Dhabi community, or that's this and that. But building communities and building these networks, for me, it's not just, okay, it's a community. I'm like, what's my point in being involved here? What am I giving to the community? Because I don't think just going in there and being selfish and being like, oh, I want something. Like, that's not a community. The definition of a community is a group of people coming together for a common goal, right? So for me, it is, what is their common goal? Do I align with that? And how do I get in there? Is it even important for me to be there? There's a lot of communities where I'm like, I'm not going to go join that. Like, I'm not going to join a rugby community. I'm not a rugby player. It's not going to happen.
For me, that's how I distinguish between networking and communities. Networking, people are there to take value. Communities, people are there to give value.
Yeah, exactly. So I think building a community is essential. I think I agree with you on the networking part, and I think that's where people make. I try to go and network and not do that, right? Because for me, I feel if everybody in the room is just trying to get something, nothing's going to get accomplished. It's like when I go to a lot of networking events, or we go to these big events, it's just people trying to sell you something the whole time. I'm like, guys, how about you try and find out what I'm doing first? Get something that is going to teach you, like give me something that is going to help me, and then try and sell me something. That to me in networking makes a lot more sense of like, hey, try and give information, try and build a bridge, try and connect with me. That's what networking is connecting. Try and connect with me and then try and sell me your product. Don't just come pitch me. Like,
what would be like your tips? Because, when we get into like the winter months and it's called a event season is here, and there are events every single day in like the likes of the Trade Centre and Expo City, and sometimes salespeople are kind of forced in a way by their companies. These events are on, go and get 25 cards, or go get me meetings, and that is challenging. And I think, like you said, like salespeople stick out like a sore thumb. They're there and they're kind of cards at the ready, like looking to just kind of spray and pray with what they're trying to do. What would your advice be if your business is kind of forcing you to do these things, but how do you maximize getting a return on investment if that's possible?
I think events specifically is a very interesting one. Like a lot of companies will find it hard. I even find it challenging at times. But I think what helps is going in with a clear plan. Being like, why are you going to this event? What do you want to accomplish at this event? Do you want to just try and close deals? Do you want to try and build a leads list? If you want to try and close deals, you're going to struggle because 9% of the exhibitors are not the decision makers. They've got their marketing and sales team there. So if you're going to go there to sell, you're going to struggle finding those decision makers as exhibitors. So go there, capture the leads, build a relationship with somebody that will be able to introduce you the next day or after the event, and find that champion at the events. If the decision maker is there, great, you might be able to close the deal, but try and go there with the right strategy, in my opinion, and a lot of research before the time. Who's going to be there? Who do I want to speak to? Why do I want to speak to them? Can I set up a meeting with them there? Then I know the decision maker is there. What is my objective and outcome? And I think that's for any sales, is like, what's my objective and outcome after that meeting? Is it to set up something post-event that you're just making an impact, putting a face to the name at the event? Because if I'm exhibiting, my mind's all over the place. I'm not going to really be full attention. You're going to be able to build a relationship with me, but I'm going to tell you, like, let's set up a meeting next week. So coming with that attitude of, oh no, I need to sign something right now, I'm most likely going to be like, no, I'm not interested. But if you build a relationship and you then follow up next week or book a meeting, that's when you're going to close the deal. In my opinion. I could be completely wrong.
I think when you was talking about that, mate, the first thing I started to think about is your LinkedIn brand and your personal branding, because you connect with people online, offline, then you don't leave us alone, right? You're all over LinkedIn, which I love, mate. And like Liam and I have built a lot of our business off of LinkedIn, which if we said to each other when we first met 13 years ago, 14 years ago, that the majority, like the way we build the majority of our business is via posting on LinkedIn. I think we would have been annoyed at our future selves. That's got to be one of the clips that get cut out for LinkedIn, is that be like, posting on LinkedIn? Like it would... I think I'd be horrified for one, but if I think about Mark Aston, like if we told
sales
him,
director,
like OG sales, like incredible as a sales director, incredibly tough as a sales director. But if we told him in 14 years we're going to just post some content on LinkedIn and it will definitely help us build our brand and our business, he probably would have fired us. So why do you do it, and how does it impact building a community, a network, and because there's a reason behind it, right?
Yeah, so I think the LinkedIn thing, and I agree with you, I think LinkedIn and maybe in the last couple of years really became that. I'm still a big fan, and I remember when we built SnapScan at one stage, I mean, I was 19 years old, I printed out a map of Cape Town CBD, posted it in the office, and my goal was like highlighting each road that I walked up and down, and I would walk into every single business and introduce myself, right? And I think as times have changed, as I adapted into stuff like LinkedIn. I think we live in a world where attention is currency, and the more attention you can grab is where you're going to be able to convert deals or make monetary value attached to it. Some people it's Instagram, some people it's TikTok. For me, it's LinkedIn. I focus purely on LinkedIn. I don't want to be an Instagram influencer. I don't want to be a TikTok dancer. It doesn't work for me.
You'd make a great dancer.
Right? Where with LinkedIn, it's interesting because I get to connect with people that I'm genuinely curious of, or where I feel like we can both benefit from a relationship. So for me, the LinkedIn content is, I'm putting content out there to try and help people. Honestly, like it sounds nonsense, but I really am. Like a big goal of my life. It has
to be, right? It has to come from a place of authenticity.
Exactly.
Like you see content that's like, you know why they've posted it is to grab attention and likes, and it's a bit clickbait. But for me, I think clients and people just see through that. Yeah. You have to post with a bit of authenticity, that it's you. Like, you have to lead with help. Yeah. I think.
And I think that's why I do it. Is A, for the help, but that's one of the reasons. I think the other reason is having that brand. What I've realized, or trying to build that brand, makes your networking, going to networking events, so much better. Because once I get there, there'll be people that come up to me and be like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I'm like, "I have no idea
it's so
who
horrible
you
when that
are."
happens, man. I've happened a couple of times this year, and I'm like, and then you're like scrolling through LinkedIn.
I'm not even scrolling LinkedIn. I've come to a point where I'm like, and they're like, "No, we saw you on LinkedIn." I'm like, "Cool, great. What's your name?"
I haven't seen you. Help me here.
And the funniest part is sometimes I'll like pull up the profile and then I'll see they followed me, but I haven't followed them back, and I'm like, quickly follow back. So I think that helps. It removes a lot of that pressure from going to networking events, that when you go there, it gives you a little bit of credibility, all that. The same when you're doing an outreach, like a cold outreach to a client or anything like that. Most of the time you can then either do that through LinkedIn, which is helpful. And if you have a strong following and you have content, it gives you some credibility and some backing. It's like a testament to who you are or the company is. And the same way, if they're reading an email and you have your LinkedIn profile there and they click it, you can see when they viewed your profile. So I'm going to be like, great, I now know that you're checking me out. And then secondly, it bridges that gap again of credibility. And I think that to me is a big part. There is the credibility sense in business.
Yeah, I have no data for this, but I'm of the opinion that by having a LinkedIn presence, you share a proposal, whatever, you'll do your usual follow-up. Yep. But your LinkedIn content is also reminding them and doing that follow-up for you.
Yep.
And it's more subconscious than calling and emailing and another email and another email.
Yeah.
It's part of the cadence that you don't really set. It's not specific to that client, but it's constant.
Yeah, it's in your face, man. It's making noise. It's getting attention,
Yeah.
and that's why I said, like, I've read up so much about it, and I very much agree about it. Is like attention in today's world is direct monetary value and currency. The more you can grab attention, the easier certain aspects become, and there's a fortunate part to it and an unfortunate part to it. But unfortunately, a lot of people still struggle with that. And I'm like, don't be shy. Put yourself out there. Even if 2 people look at it, it's 2 people that you previously didn't speak to that you got their attention now. Can you connect with them?
That's kind of what I was going to, my next question would be. So there might be people listening to this podcast that might have posted once 6 months ago, not got a return, and then decided not to. Or there might be salespeople that might post once or every fortnight and just haven't got the idea of content and what to do. And you know, we post every day. I think we're lucky. Like the way I post is off the back of meetings with clients. I'll think of one thing that's happened, or there might have been a challenging day, or there might be things that are on a day-to-day basis. But if there's someone there that's trying to do it, it might be their first ever post, or someone that's just not got that kind of volume of content. What would be your advice, and how would you get them to start posting more consistently?
I think don't be shy.
Yeah.
Or scared.
But that's easier said than done.
I know.
Like to turn someone, like, don't be scared. Give us more context to that.
I think about it. If I had to go do sales at an event, right? I'm not going to succeed if I'm scared of going up and speaking to people. So that same courage you have to take in sales to phone somebody, that same courage you have to take to go knock on a door or walk into a business and introduce yourself, you can use that same courage to post on LinkedIn. And it's a mindset change. Don't think of it as like, 100,000 people are going to view this or whatever. Like, just view it as like, hey, I just posted this as if I went to speak to Liam directly or Ben directly. And I think it's overcoming that hurdle and understanding what's your objective. What are you trying to get out of LinkedIn in the first place in your content? Are you just trying to market and build a brand or a reputation? Are you trying to help somebody? All those kind of things. And that starts building that confidence in posting. There's a lot of times where I'm like, man, I don't know if I should post this. And I'm like, let me just do it, because attention span is slow. And if I mess up today, a week later, people are most likely going to forget that I messed it up, right? So I've come over that hurdle of like, okay, whatever. There are still times where I have to try and I'll rewrite something 3 or 4 times because I tend to try and overthink it. By the 3rd time, I'm like, okay, whatever, let me just put this out, and what happens, right?
And that objective is really important as well. Like, if your objective is, I want to smash the internet and I'm going to get 1,000 likes and comments, then that content's never going to be great. But if it's like, this is something that's dear to me, or this has happened, or this is something that I really want to show people, and if one person likes it, great. That content will be so more authentic that it will really resonate. Yeah. Whereas, like Ben said earlier, like, the ones that are looking for that kind of
viral. I just want to go viral. I hate that. Like, honestly,
have you gone viral yet, mate?
Define viral.
When you put press ups of us, and they'll be going viral.
Exactly. So for me, it's what is viral? Because 100,000 views to one person is going to be like, oh my gosh, this is viral. To somebody else, 1 million views. So for me, there's a constant, like, the views don't matter anymore. I really don't care about that. Like, I'll check and I'll be like, yeah, okay. For me, I'm looking at, like, are people interacting? Are people, the likes, are there comments?
And the right people.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And I've often had where I'll post something and people are too scared to comment and they'll direct inbox me. Then I realize I made an impact, where I'm like, I've done this more than once, where I've done something and I think the post is an utter fail. Like, there's nobody commenting on it, nothing like that. But I'll get 2-3 days later, I get a message being like, man, I actually tried to implement what you said. It made a difference, this and that. Can we jump on a call? Like, I always tell people, and again, I'll say this here as well, my calendar link is on my LinkedIn. It's open to the public. I always tell people, I'm like, if you want help, book in a call. Just leave the message and I understand why we're doing the call, that they're going into it. But I'm always available to help people and guide people through it. But don't post for the idea of, I want to be viral and I want to be famous. Like, go to TikTok, go to Instagram. Wrong crowd.
I think one thing you said there is the difference between a good and a great salesperson, whereas, and probably a bad salesperson, like, bad salesperson just wants to sell. A good salesperson potentially wants to build a bit of rapport, but ultimately sell. Whereas a great salesperson is just there to help.
Yeah.
And if off the back of that you get a lead or a prospect or an opportunity, it's great. But, great salespeople are there just to help understand where are the challenges and what can we do to solve them.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people out here do that. It's just sell, see what we can do, spray and pray and hit targets.
It's also a massive long-term game, right? Posting once is going to do nothing. Post once every day for 6 months. Then let's figure out if it's working after 6 months, not once. I think a lot of people build it up in their head, post the post and go, well, that didn't work. Look at Wesley, he's got hundreds of likes.
I mean, my challenge to me is like, I mean, I look at it now. I used to monitor how many people I have as followers. And I had these key milestones in place for myself, being like, oh man, if I get to X, I'm going to be super happy, get to X. And I think once now I'm just over the 7,000 mark. And I had this goal of like, oh, if I get to 7,500, I'm going to be super happy. Now I'm like,
it's a zero-sum game, right?
It's like, it doesn't really make a difference. The difference between 3,000 and where I am now, I'm like, not really a big difference. And I don't think that there comes a time where exceeding X amount, it doesn't really change anything that happens.
The only way I'd flip that is the more people that follow your content, the more people you can help, mate.
Of course. And if they comments and stuff, the wider the reach. But at one stage, I was chasing the like follower count. And then I just realized like, it's not really making a difference. Like I'm already helping X amount of people, have more people following now. It's great and I appreciate it, but it's not like a metric that I'm constantly checking and following anymore.
You arrived in Dubai 18 months ago, 2 years ago?
Plus minus, yeah.
What's the biggest thing that you've done to help accelerate your career here?
Biggest thing I've done to help accelerate my career here is, I think, building bridges and connections. I don't think it's about... My career here was never just solely focused on me. I mean, otherwise, if it was, I could do career jumps every 3 months to a different role and be jumping up. I think for me here in the UAE, it was knowledge, learning, and then building bridges and connections. And the reason why, and I'll go back to this, and when you were saying great salespeople and bad salespeople, and I think the difference between a great salesperson, somebody that builds relationships, doesn't sell necessarily, builds relationships and helps people, because those relationships they carry with them for life, right? So even if they leave, they still have those relationships that follow them. Bad salesperson is going to push you for the sell, leave you, and move on to the next. He's bad because he's just lost all that time that he's invested getting to that, and he's probably hard sold you, and you have a very like the sales guy opinion about him. Where a great salesperson, you don't really realize he's a salesperson. He seems more of as a friend or a consultant that even if in a year's time he comes back to you, you're going to be like, man, how's it going? Like, what are you doing now? Maybe he is a different product, service, all that. And a great salesperson builds their base that way.
The region's small, right?
Yeah.
People talk. If you do a great job, you'll get those referrals and you'll get people who will come to you. And if you do a bad job, equally, people will run a mile, right?
Yeah.
Just in the interest of protecting the bad salesperson, is usually it's a business problem. And we said this in the last podcast. It's a business problem. Very unusually is an individual person problem. They've come into a business, lack of training, lack of onboarding, and been told to get on with it. All they know is to push because their leadership are telling them to do that.
Yeah.
So they've never been mentored or coached in an environment to go out and build relationships. And like some people, it comes more natural than others. But I don't think like salespeople as a whole, the bad people aren't trying to be bad salespeople. There's a bit of desperation because their leadership have forced them like that. Like I think that the message has to be, there's got to be more pressure on businesses to develop salespeople in the right way versus shitting on bad salespeople.
Yeah, I think the part of the bad salespeople is also when they are really just they're playing I mean, I agree with a numbers game, and I'm also pretty hard as a manager on like targets and stuff. And I believe you should be able to handle that pressure, and I think that comes with experience. Like there'll always be pressure in sales. It's a performance-based career, right? You chose sales. You need to be able to handle the pressure, but at some point when that desperation starts kicking in, either I do agree with you, you've not had the right training, but that comes down to the salesperson as well, because after hours, nothing stops them from looking for coaching, studying online videos, learning tactics. Even now, often, like myself, in the background, I'll have training videos playing, and I'll send it to my team randomly. I'll be like, guys, check this out. I think it works. And I think there's that desire for constantly learning that can turn bad into great. And too many people are focused on like, oh, I need to make $1,000 right now. I'm going to speak to X amount of people. I don't care.
Pure transactional.
Like you're forgetting that person actually has feelings. Is this even worthwhile to them? You're just looking at a dollar sign right now. What? Like, no.
Yeah.
And I think it depends, right? So some products and services, sure. But in general, I wouldn't go that way.
So
I do agree with you in a way. It is coaching and stuff, but I would say
there's responsibility on both sides.
Right? Like you applied for this role, right? So you need to back what a salesperson's great at selling themselves. So don't jump into a role saying I can do something, get into the role, and then be like, yeah, I need coaching on how to do this. Then I'm going to question you, being like, what? Product knowledge, sure. Coaching on the product and the service and everything around that, sure. But how to sell, that lands on you as a salesperson.
Once you're hiring at a mid to senior level, right? The
junior
guys,
I know I'm going to train him. Then I'm like, listen, I'm like, great, you got low targets. I'm going to mold you.
Yeah,
and like, I'm still saying this. If there's anybody that is a younger version of myself, please reach out to me. I will mold you. I will give you the experience. But I'm like, the one thing I'm trying to find is multiple younger versions of myself.
Mate, they're either in jail or working in sales. There's no middle ground.
Climbing the wall somewhere.
Come on.
So just to kind of like wrap part 2 up, if you were given advice, like top 3 tips for someone that wants to crack it in the Middle East, may not be here at the moment, has seen the potential like we all did, what would be your top 3 kind of community and network led tips to get someone from coming here to being a great salesperson as quick as possible?
So I get asked this question quite a bit, specifically from like South African connections of mine of like, how do I do business in the Middle East, all these kind of things to build a network. And my first comment will be, stop trying to do it from where you are. Come here. The Middle East,
massive.
You need to be here in person.
Massive.
Right? Before I moved here, I spent a week in Abu Dhabi and I started building my community. And that's when I realized, like, I want to move here. I spent a week here, started building community, and I was like, done. Hub 71. I spent a week in Hub 71 and I was like, sold. I was like, that's it. I'm like, got back to South Africa, basically resigned and moved to UAE. So be here. Make sure this is a place you want to be. It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
Like for some people, they're not going to fit in. They're not going to have a great time, and that's okay.
It's hard, right?
It is for some people. I love it. Like I love the summers, right? So I'm a strange person. Some people run away from the summer. So it's hard work. It is hard work, and I think there's this misconception of, oh, I'm going to come to the UAE and drive a Bugatti. I'm like, guys, you're
man,
not.
You don't have a Ferrari?
Oh man, I wish. Like that's a crazy sentiment to have. I think that the world, and I remember somebody telling me this before, and I stick to this, is the UAE is one of the few places, Middle East is one of the few places where your dreams can become a reality, right? But it's up to you to put in the work to make it happen. You'll have the support that will help you make it happen, but it's not going to land on your lap. Like, work with the government, work with the people here for what are they trying to achieve. Are you doing better for the country? Are you trying to build the country into something better? Are you trying to be part of the bigger picture? These things will help accelerate your growth, your network, your community, being here for the right reasons. Why do you want to live here? Just for the money? Oh, man, that's not a great idea. Are you living here because this is a center of business for working internationally? You get to work with different cultures and nationalities, and that inspires you. Maybe it's the safety, maybe it's this, that. But having other than monetary values to be here, that's a big key of advice for building relationships and networks here, in my opinion. And being here. Like, don't try and build a relationship and be active in a community from outside here. Not in the beginning. Like, you got to be here and build those relationships to start with. After that, you can go travel for 6 months, go run away from the summer. It's fine. But when you come back, you will have had these relationships that you've built up.
And like, I was speaking to people this week from the UK that like, yeah, I'll come out once I get a job, and it's like, but you're going to struggle, mate. And like, and the reality is that so many people want to come here at the moment. But there's already some really, really, really good people here. Unless you're exceptional, unless you've got a skill that no one else has, and knowledge of the region on how to sell, the chance of you getting a job from abroad to move here is so slim.
Yeah.
Like, I understand you can't quit and come here. Like, that's too much of a risk for people with responsibility. But take a holiday. So, like, you'd be amazing at this, mate. And like, get yourself in Hub 71 for a week, and Astrolabs, and all the other communities for 2 weeks. I'm not going to go to a beach club and live the Dubai life. Like, let's do 2 weeks out here. I'll meet every recruiting person. I'll meet every business that will willing to sit in front of me. I'll go to every community event. I'll go to every hub, and then figure out whether you can get a job or not. And your chances are going to be.
That's literally what I did. Man. I came I never had a passport, right? Up until just before I moved to the UAE. Wow. The first country I came to after, like, out of sight of South Africa was the UAE. Went to Abu Dhabi, and I came with a plan. Like, I came for a week holiday. But with that holiday, I found out about the Hub 71 breakfast on the Monday. I started connecting with some people before the time. And I spoke to them and be like, hey, can I meet you when I'm there? So I set up these in-person, like, coffees, those kind of things. And I planned to myself that the Monday to Friday, every day of that week, I was going into Hub 71.
It's a full-time job.
And I went there and I worked, like, did some work while on holiday from there. But I wanted to see, like, what is this experience like? Do I even enjoy this? Would I like to work from here? And that's when I fell in love with the community and started building this community around myself and getting connected into it. That I was like, by the end of the week, I was like, that's it. I want to be here. Started getting connected into who's hiring here. Started speaking to startups. Came with then towards the end of the week, I had a goal. I was like, that's it. By this date, I want to be here. And I made it very clear to every person I spoke to, being like, man, I fell in love with the UAE. These are the reasons why I love it. And I want to be here by X date. And I didn't care what it took to be there. I was like, that's the message I was putting out while building my network, is like, these are the reasons I want to be here.
Mate, such good advice for almost anyone trying to get out here, mate.
And, mate, you're smashing it. And long may it continue. Cool. We'll wrap up part 2, get into part 3, quick fire.
Nice.
Get your answer to our first playbook question. Sweet.
Great.
So you've been to a meeting. It went well.
Yeah.
You've sent the proposal.
Yeah.
Then they've ghosted you. So this is from episode 1 from Katrina. So great meeting, went well, all the right noises, sent the proposal, and then they've ghosted you. What would you do?
Man, that happens more often to anybody. That, like, no matter how experienced you are, that's still going to happen. And I think there's multiple things that you can do here and look at. Is am I just emailing them? Did I try and phone them? Did I try and link them? Like, multiple touch points. Secondly, what I would do is I wouldn't contact them again. I would get somebody else in the team to contact them. And I'm doing this with my team currently, just by the way. So this is real advice that I'm giving. Is sometimes when they see your name come up, they're like, it's not urgent. When it's a different phone number or a different email, they pick up the phone. So with my team, I'll do a phone call. I'll be like, hey, this is Wesley. I'm the regional manager. I just want to check in on how your experience was, that type of thing. And a very, like, I just want to.
But that has to be authentic.
It is authentic. I really do care about what the experience was like. But suddenly, this is that final push that person needed of, you know what? I had such a great experience with that AE. I've just been so distracted. And it's that final push. So sometimes it's not necessarily what you can do, but leverage those around you that can maybe be that slight push. Alternatively, you don't also know what's going on in that company. I've had it where I get ghosted. 3 months later, the company gets back to me. There's been restructuring and things happening in the company. So try and find more than one champion. So if this champion fades away, you have another champion or another contact person to go to. Again, these are in larger scale deals. Smaller scale deals, these normally, like, you don't get ghosted. It normally just goes through. Larger scale deals, what I would recommend is have more than one champion so that you can leverage this from multiple directions. LinkedIn is a great one to message, being like, hey, WhatsApp helps a lot. I found WhatsApp, to me, when I start getting ghosted or when anybody gets ghosted, normally 10 out of 10 times I'll get a reply. If I send a WhatsApp, just being like, hey, checking in, what happened? They don't want to blue tick you. That seems bad. You'll at least know where you're standing. And I think that's the key part, is just knowing where you're standing.
I'd rather
so you can forecast it.
Yeah,
I'd rather get it.
Tell me,
this isn't working, and fine.
Yeah.
And then I can double down on it, being like, cool, I'm not going to try and persuade you otherwise. I just like to understand what happened. And that really is, it really isn't to try and convince the person otherwise. It really is just to understand, why is it a no? So that I can learn from that going in the future.
I think the seniority thing there is key, right? Is just get big dogs to talk to big dogs, make everyone feel a bit more comfy.
Everybody
and it's
has a
all good.
manager. Everybody has a manager, and your team leader and manager is there to support you. Don't be
It's just
scared.
culturally out here. I think people like that, especially when there's kind of big deals. Some of the priorities could be massive in terms of their business needs. It's just that comfort to know that if anything goes wrong, and things can go wrong, that there's that connection between like the C-level or business owners.
I think that comes down to leadership style, right?
Yeah.
Is as you were saying about good and bad salespeople and stuff, is something like that. Your leadership might be, oh, that's a bad salesperson. They're being ghosted. But good leadership's going to be like, hey, what's going on here? Do you need help? Can I give them a call as just an overview and an experience call and see where I can help you? And that might make that bad salesperson into a great salesperson.
That's what we want to be, eh? Great salespeople. Cool. Quick fire round then, mate. So, I'm going to fire some questions at you. All
Ready.
sales related. You're the
Let's
expert. Doesn't need to be the quickest answer. You can, give us a few sentences if you want. But let's get cracking. Cold calling or hyper-personalized emails?
Cold calling. Hands down, cold calling. I think hyper-personalized emails too much go to... I get emails even. It goes to spam. People don't pay attention to it. And a lot of it's AI generated. People think cold calling is dead. I think that cold calling and not just pitching the person. Like if I'm reading down a script, man, spam. But if I'm actually cold calling, being like, hey, this is Wesley from Remote Pass. I know a lot of people like you normally struggle with paying their remote employees. I'd love to have a chat and see if that's something you're having a difficulty with or that like something like that. That's going to work.
Lead with curiosity.
Yeah, lead with curiosity. Ask questions. And honestly, just be like, listen, if you don't buy the product, it's just fine. I just want to know.
Yeah.
I want to learn what like your systems are. Cold calling. Hands down, cold calling. I firmly, 100%, my whole career, always believe, speak. And on that cold call, best believe, I must not speak like that. Use your damn tonality and get your personality out there.
Community building or networking?
Community building. Definitely. Community building is much deeper for me. They go hand in hand, but a community will always be there to support you. It's towards a common goals, communities.
Long sales cycle or short sales cycle?
It depends on the deal and what type of deal it is, right? So if we're looking, of course, anybody would say, oh, I'd love a short sales cycle. But if we're being realistic, you're looking at $1 million account, that's not going to be a short sales cycle. You can shorten it, but it's not going to happen. I think the best answer there for a salesperson is you need to build a pipeline of both. So build your baseline that you know you're going to be covered or at least have 50% of your target covered in the sales cycles that are quickly closing, so that while you're working on the longer sales cycles, those close the next month or the month thereafter while you've been building this baseline in the shorter ones. So you need to leverage both. You can't, if you just rely on the one, you're going to be screwed. If you rely on the other one, man, you're going to have to work 10 times harder.
Enterprise deals or SME deals?
Again, my answer is both. It's hard because that's a very difficult yes or no, one or the other question. Because I think...
What do you enjoy more, mate?
The high of enterprise deals are great. Like I get a killer high off an enterprise deal, right? Like I enjoy SMB deals because I get to build these relationships and they're fun and they're exciting. But the high that a salesperson gets off of closing an enterprise deal that is maybe like a big logo, a big volume, that's something very special. And I think there's a study about it, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this or not, but they've done a study about the sales high and that feeling that people in the sales world get when they close specific deals or when they're constantly closing it. It's linked to the same chemicals released in your brain as cocaine. So once you start hitting those things, you're going to want more of them. And I think enterprise deals have their own very special segment. Because they make you feel great. They make you feel like, man, I did this.
Big dopamine hit.
Exactly. Where the SMB ones they're fun, they're community interacting, you're building relationships, and they're day to day.
Working the weekend or fully switching off?
Honestly, I work weekends too, man. I knew this question was going to come up, and I was speaking to my wife last night, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to answer this because I don't think... Personally, I would tell people take the weekend off. I don't recommend for everybody, but for me with ADHD, no matter what I'm doing, I'm always going to be thinking about this. And even if I go somewhere and this has been my whole career, my whole life, is I think when you're very passionate about what you're doing or the product that you're selling, it becomes very much a part of you. So even if you're out, and I could be on a boat and somebody could be speaking about like, oh, they're working remotely or they've got that, like these teams, I'm going to be like, man, what's up? Like, I'm going to get in
Will
there.
you have your remote pass t-shirt on?
I'm going to be there. And I think it comes through to that. I think you should turn off, but I think when you're super passionate and invested, you'll always pick up on cues no matter where you are. You'll never be 100% off. The same, I mean, come on, guys, let's be honest. You're telling me that on a weekend when you're off and somebody next to you is like, yo, man, I'm having troubles with my sales team. You're not going to be like, hey.
Maybe you're in a business, never switches off,
exactly. You're going to be like, I think it is good, though. Like, I do encourage people to take time off. I just struggle.
Interested by this question, bear in mind what's on your T-shirt, who you work for, and the subject of today's podcast, office or remote?
Remote. And I have a good analogy for this, and I still want to do a LinkedIn post about it. But if we think about remote, right, it's a big hype at the moment. People are like, oh, remote teams and return to office and all that. And I want to draw a picture for everybody, and specifically in sales industry. So if we go back 20, 30 years ago even, you'd have the sales guy that's hired out of a Dubai office, right? But now your sales guy has to drive 5 hours to the next city to go do his deals there, or you're paying that fuel and that time for him to drive, or you're putting him on a plane to fly to New York to go do deals there, all those kind of things, which is insane. Where I'm like, with today's world and remote work, you can hire somebody in New York, let them work there, build a community there around them, and be more effective than flying the one guy back and forth. Where if you just hire that person or allow move this person there full time, let them live there, even if it's for 6 months or a year, and build that community around them in that space instead of just being the traveling salesman. Rather hire people in those locations and build a presence there. It's going to allow you to expand at a rapidly faster pace, in my opinion.
What's the downside of having a fully remote sales team then? I understand the benefits of being next to your customers, but not next to your sales team.
I think my downside is I like speaking to people. Yeah. So my downside is I don't get to speak to my team in person as much. I get to speak to a whole community. I mean, Hub 71's right there. So I still speak to people the whole time, every day. I'm not in front of just the camera the whole day. But I think I do miss that, just that like team interaction. And where we make up for that is we'll have like team lunches where we're like, okay, everybody in the UAE meet up here for lunch or this or that. Same in Egypt. The team in Egypt would like meet up for dinners. We do these events where we'll fly a bunch of the team members into specific events, and you get to have those team interactions still. So there are ways of managing it. But I think it's that quirky, like when you're sitting in the office and you have the same person next to you the whole time, like you two have each other. I think having that is something that you sometimes miss in remote work, but there are ways to subsidize that by building a community around yourself. I always tell people, just because you're working remotely doesn't mean you have to sit in your house. Go venture out into a co-working space. Go work in a co-working space. Go work in a coffee shop where other remote workers are, and you'll start building a community of remote workers around you, and you suddenly won't have that loneliness anymore.
How do you switch off, mate?
That's something I struggle with. Like I honestly, I can give you hobbies, but switch off is.
But is there something you do that you just don't think about work? Do you still game? Like, is there something there?
I game, but when I game, the problem with me in gaming these days is I try and figure out how I can develop games. So, like, I think my mind, the ADHD is there. I think the only way that I really turn, I mean, even my friendship circles are very work related. I think about it. Yeah, I think gym is something where, I mean, still check your emails and stuff while you're gymming, but it's things like that. I think that for me, there's little bits in the back of my mind at all times, but switching off would be gym, gaming, cooking. I like cooking a lot. So cooking is a pretty interesting one to me. I'm trying to think of all the things that do not have work aspects to it, like reading has a work aspect to it, but that is still a switch off to me. It's like I feel productive when I'm reading. For me, the problem with turning off, and my wife sometimes hates this, is I can watch, for example, series maybe with her for like an hour or 2 hours, and then I start getting fidgety. I'm like, I'm not being productive. Like I can't, if you have to make me just a whole weekend sit still and do nothing, not anything productive, I'm going to lose my mind. There are times where I need to be like, I'll start being like, cool, let's go do something. Let's do something productive. Like, let's go put grass in the balcony, or let's go, like, I need to be active or busy with something that I feel is not just wasting time, it's using time.
Something you said earlier around expectation is, as a leader, you can't expect your team to operate in the same way.
No, not
so
at
as
all.
long as you're clear with your team.
I tell them today, take a weekend. Nobody ever has to reply to me on weekends or evenings or anything like that. Like, it really is just, I think, my personality set, right? Because for me, it's not just work. Like, I have fun. Like, if on a weekend I'm like, oh, I'm not being productive, or I have that unproductive feeling, I don't have to be like, oh, what am I going to do? Am I going to paint the walls of the apartment? I'm going to be like, oh, give me my laptop. Let me, I don't know, jump into some emails or schedule my planning for the next week and stuff. And it gives me that fix almost that I need. And I can do that for like an hour, and I can put it away and go do whatever my wife wants me to do, or whatever I want to do. Maybe we want to go to a beach club, right? But even at a beach club, my mind goes, I'm like, what do these guys do for a living? I'm like, it has happened more than once where I'm like, oh, okay. How many of you are actually like workers, remote workers, run companies? It does happen. Like, my mind goes there all the time.
God bless your wife, mate. You've had a tough quarter. It's day one of the next quarter. How do you reset? How do you go again?
I think if you've had a tough quarter and it's a new quarter, first analyze what went wrong in the last quarter. What made it tough? What could I have done better? Understanding the roots of the previous quarter will help you do better this quarter. Plus, invariably, if you're in sales and you had a bad quarter, you should have used that bad quarter to build an extremely strong pipeline for this quarter. So it's following up on all those deals that maybe on the last day said like, oh no, we're signing next week. Follow up on those, because if you don't, you're going to have another bad quarter. So it's build that follow up, understand what's in my pipeline, what caused the bad quarter, what can I do to leverage the low hanging fruit from that bad quarter to make this a great quarter. What are your thoughts on that?
It's tough, mate, right? I think understanding it is tough.
Yeah.
Is probably my point one. It's like, it is so hard to go again.
Yeah. Because you're demotivated, right?
Probably.
Yeah.
And like, comes down to leadership and your passion for the product and all of those things. But
also because you didn't get your commission check. Yeah. You're like a little bit deflated now.
It depends. I think there's just so much in the use of the data, the use of what went well, what hasn't gone so well, and just how can you repeat what's gone well, and how do you reflect on
something?
I mean, I agree. It's hard. I mean, I make it sound easy, right? Like 100%. I make it sound easy in the way that I speak because I get excited.
It doesn't need to be complicated as well. It can be simple about how to reflect and how to change.
But I think a big part would be pipeline. I think if you had a bad quarter, no matter what went wrong, I would say always, if I want to start this quarter and I'm going to try and make up for a bad quarter or anything like that, I'm going to look at my pipeline and be like, man, where can I improve my pipeline? Like, do I have bad deals in my pipeline? Is there anything that is low hanging that might have been from 2-3 quarters ago that I can leverage now? But as sales, you should, and I know salespeople hate their CRM tool. I hate using a CRM tool. I mean, I'm even in management and I'm like, I understand why we need to use it. I know, but the thing is, I understand why we need to use this, right? Because I'm in a management role. But my whole life as well, I've also been in the role of a salesperson. So I have that respect and I know how it feels, right? It's such a pain. But once you get to a management role, you understand why it's important and why your management and your leadership keeps pushing you on this. And my recommendation and what I wish I could teach myself from a younger age is, even though it's hard and it sucks, keep checking your pipeline on your CRM, keep it updated, because when you have a bad quarter, that's where you're going to learn what went wrong. You're not going to remember every phone call you had. You're not going to remember the email sent, but being able to have that database and going back into it and being like, hey, you know what actually went wrong with this deal? Let me go read my emails and all that.
I actually would rather flip it, mate. Something Liam used to do really well as a leader, and like this applies to someone that's been successful or not successful, is what went right, even though you didn't hit your target. Yeah. What went right, and how do we do more of the thing that went right?
Yeah, I agree with that 100% as well.
Yeah,
like either one of, I would say you should do both. Just the only reason I'm saying you need to look at what went wrong is to try and learn not to do it again.
Yeah.
Because if I just look at what went right, I might make the same mistakes. Because like you were saying earlier about getting ghosted, you're going to be like, oh, this was going right. All the things seem good, but now I went ghosted. So I want to go learn, why did I get ghosted here? So a bit of both.
Love it. One final tip you'd leave for the community, mate?
For the community, as in community building, sales, what do you mean?
Salespeople out there, what's the biggest tip that you'd leave?
Biggest tip is always be curious. Like, never stop being curious, because out of curiosity you will learn, and curiosity will get you sales.
Finally, this is definitely finally. Making a sales playbook. You answered the question that Katrina gave us on episode 1. So have a little think now. Think about a challenge that's going on, maybe with you right now, maybe with your team, and then we'll go outside, we'll write it down, and then we'll get the next guest to answer. Then you've got to listen to episode 3.
I can't wait to see the answer to that question.
But mate, we can go on for hours here, but amazing conversation. Thanks so much. I think there's so much for people to take away about networking, community, the power of LinkedIn, and how to crack it in sales, because what you've done in the first 2 years here is amazing, and you carry on here, you're going to go far, mate. So thanks so much.
I appreciate it. Thanks both of you guys for having me on.
Cheers, guys. Take care.
Cheers.